Hey everyone, and welcome to Pick My Solar Live. I am Andrew Bear here with the esteemed Patrick Crowley.
Thank you.
What we're going to be discussing today is grid resiliency and how solar helps the power grid. As always, ask us anything or write a comment, and we'll get back to you. All right, so grid resiliency. First thing is, America's electric grid is gigantic. 450,000 miles of transmission lines.
There's a lot of miles.
A lot of miles. I mean, the
Lot of
country's
miles.
huge.
Yeah,
And you can get electricity basically everywhere.
right.
So,
Yeah, any highway you're on, you'll see them off in the distance or
Right.
anything,
yeah.
And obviously the more noticeable just in your everyday neighborhood. If you don't see them, they're underground.
Yeah, that's true. What was I going to say? Had a thought on that? No, I'm forgetting it.
I guess I just nailed it.
Well done. And this is also interesting. Blackouts, brownouts, and power outages are very common. Apparently, in 2017, there were over 3,500,
Wow.
which blows my mind. You don't hear about it
You
that
said
often.
apparently. Your question.
I did
is
not
data.
know. I did not know. No, apparently, this is new data to me.
Well, it looks like it also. I mean, just looking at that number, that's affecting more than 10% of our population.
Yeah, that's
So
that's
it's not insignificant.
yeah,
And obviously, that means you have no power. Most people rely on power in this country.
yeah, for sure. So to mitigate that, engineers will talk about grid resiliency. You'll hear some politicians talk about smart grids and stuff like that. What they're basically getting at is they want to make the grid more secure, which means less hackable, and they want to improve grid adequacy, which just means things not failing, like power lines and things like that. And solar can help with that stuff. Renewable energy in general can help with that stuff. It can create more durability, flexibility, and resilience. And so one of the ways it can do that is you have a distributed resource. You have smaller generation facilities in a lot more locations. So if one generation facility fails, it's not nearly as high of a percentage of the overall system.
Right. It's like they say in finance, diversify your portfolio. Same thing applies to energy. You diversify the number of
Yeah.
sources as well as the types of sources. So if,
Right.
obviously, if it were all solar, you'd have trouble at night. So you can't
Right.
just go all that route, or you can't put wind in the middle of city or something like that. It's not going to work. But
Right.
just having that kind of flexibility and different types of sources is going to give you more adaptability when things don't work.
Yeah, and typically when people talk about renewable energy too, they're also talking about energy storage, which would be a big portion of any grid that has a lot of renewables.
Right.
And that can also help with it because you have extra energy that you can just put onto the grid or take off the grid at any time, which is extremely important. What grid operators try to do is try to match the amount of energy that everyone needs with the amount of energy that they're producing. And so if you have a battery, you can just instantaneously flip
Just
on and off.
throttle it.
Yeah, that's much better than any kind of other plant that's out there.
So it's basically about meeting supply and demand.
It's
in the end.
that's exactly what it
And
is.
so when we have things go out, it is due to there being too much demand sometimes. There's too much stress on this supply. Renewable energy, one, takes people away from needing that because they're producing it on their own. If you look
Yeah.
at the very, very small micro level for the homeowner,
Yes.
but even at the macro level, you can have that type of a distribution help you out.
Yeah, and in a sense, because storage is still important on the micro level. But
Sure. Yeah.
And so here's what a system like that would look like for a homeowner, particularly one who is concerned about power outages. So you could have a solar system and a battery connected to the main panel box of your house. And so what that's going to do is solar is going to charge your battery, and then if the power goes out, you can use that energy from your battery. If the power goes out and it's sunny, you can just use the energy directly off your panels. If the power goes out and it's nighttime, you can use the energy from your battery to stay online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can also, we would always recommend if you do have battery backup that you kind of treat it, you do still adjust your habits.
Yeah.
Like if your power went out and you didn't have battery backup, my mom always taught me, keep that fridge closed as much as possible. Let's keep things cold.
For sure.
But if you were, you shouldn't be blasting your AC, charging your electrical vehicle. You'd still be operating conservatively.
Yeah.
You just have the ability to say, if it's really, really hot, turn your AC on for 20, 30 minutes, or keep your refrigerator running, use the lights sparingly, but you can use them. It does allow you that flexibility. I think a little bit of the misconception is that it gives
Just
you ultimate
your whole
flexibility.
house still available as much as you want.
Well, they have all those the images that are so common with people who have solar and batteries: pitch black, trees falling, lightning strikes, and then there's one house. Like it's having a party. Don't have a party. Just watch your TV maybe, or watch it on your phone. That doesn't need your electricity.
Well, then you got to charge your phone.
True. Maybe Wi-Fi. Okay, so don't do that. But you get the point. You still operate conservatively, but it does give you that autonomy that you would not have without battery. Because we talked about it before. If you just have solar and the power lines are down, that's direct current. People are working on those lines. You cannot be sending power out to the grid. That is a huge safety risk.
Yeah.
So we would, not we, but every solar system shuts down in the case of a grid outage. But if you have a battery, you can have this kind of contained loop, which is what you can see in that last diagram there with the battery in the house and the solar in the panel box.
Yeah, and just to touch on one point, I imagine that a lot of those grid outages, like I said, there were over 3,500. I imagine that by far the majority of those are occurring for a small amount of time.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then
and in a smaller area as well.
For sure.
Like a tree knocks down a power line.
Right.
Back on the East Coast. It's fairly common.
Yeah. And if that's the case, then battery is going to be particularly helpful then, because you'll be able to, you don't have as much time that you have to save that energy for.
Right. And on that note too, if you're thinking, well, how do I prepare? I don't know when this stuff is going to go out. And if you're more concerned about backup than you are maybe about load shifting or other purposes for the battery, you might want to make sure that your battery always has, say, 50% charge, or you don't deploy more than 50% or something like that, so that if power went out in the middle of the night, which is probably more common than the day, I guess, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, or it would maybe a little bit more of an impact just because it's pitch black. You obviously wouldn't be producing solar, and if your battery was already drained, you'd have nothing.
Right.
So if you had a little bit in your battery, then you'd be good to go, and then obviously you're going to produce a little bit less if there's a storm and that's the reason stuff went out, but you'd be fine with the solar backup in the day.
Yeah, for sure. Something to consider with a battery system.
Yeah.
And I believe, yes, that is everything from us on Grid Resiliency. As always, come to Pick My Solar Live. Right now, through the end of September, we're offering $599 for anyone who refers a friend and they come to us and go solar, $500 for each person. So go tell people about us and you both save money.
Wow, that's just an incredible deal.
All right, signing out.